Internet Archive in general, like we had FOMs there like 3 years ago. It's really, really cool, awesome building. But they just kind of work to keep the web archived. So like Wayback Machine is an Internet Archive tool, which is super cool. So anyway, without further ado, Tracey.
Cool. Mic's working?
Are we good on?
Okay.
Yeah. Sweet.
Okay, cool. So let me start a little timer here. 1 second. Okay, so my name's Tracey Jaquith, and I'm from Internet Archive, and we are going to potentially try a world premiere and actually call people in. Have people done that at a Demuxed talk before? We'll see. All right, awesome. We're going to claim that. Okay, so what is Popcorn? Popcorn is a web-based video editor, and we are also going to talk a little bit about remixable TV news, because that's something I've been working on, as with others. It started as a tool called PopcornJS in 2011, and was basically a JavaScript library of events that you could sort of key on a timeline. It was really cool. You could program a little bit of JSON with a little JavaScript wrapper, and you could get little events to pop up. You could get little maps to pop up, tweets, all sorts of interesting things. It was a collaboration with Seneca College, which I think is in Canada, computer science department, and it was this really amazing, super functional group, and I always thought of them as a circus, and I always wanted to run away with them. They were really, really cool. They also had people working from the Boston group called Boku, and it was a highly open community. They sought advice, features, additions, collaborations. They were really, really good stuff. And the vision was web-native video, where you weave the web into video. So it's sort of, instead of just bringing the video to the web, it's sort of bring the web back into video. Pretty cool idea. It's based on Node, NPM, Grunt, lots of other things. So then, that was a little bit on the nerdy side. You had to kind of know how to program just a little bit. They wanted to make an in-browser editor, which is basically what we're going to look at today. And they called it PopcornMaker. They debuted that in London in 2012, which is really fun. Some of the team partied so hard. Some of them didn't show up on stage. That was kind of disappointing. But it's fun for me to watch them. Yeah, the idea was it would be a web-based video editor. Why not? How hard could it be? They had filmmakers on staff, so the idea was let's really bring something native to how basically you would want to edit and actually use web and assets. So what was kind of cool is URL addressable media actually became an asset, both in the projects, but also a plus, because there's so many things that have start and end times and little pieces now that you could actually just use these and use clips much more easily. So they hooked right into that. They added some more interactive events. You could do Twitter searches and little roles. There were maps and stuff like that, so you could watch events around the web, and you could watch map things happen. It was really, really cool. And the idea was that publishing is as simple as a JSON file. So it's an edit decision list. There's not really anything to crunch. You don't have to download stuff. It's just this little JSON file. So no rendering. And using something that Mark Sermon and others really promoted from Mozilla, the idea of view source. Anyone should be able to sort of look at this and see what's in this project. That was one of the goals. So now we're going to demo briefly. It sort of brought back, and let's see, get this full screen. So it sort of went away, and this is the current version of it now. We're hosting it on archive.org, and you can basically play video with
diabetes,
audio,
and half the
overcharging long enough. It's time to fight.
And here I'm basically, and you can do sort of picture-in-picture. You can do quotes. You can do hot links. So this is working with some of our partners at PolitiFact and factcheck.org. There's citations, so you can actually sort of see where all the references are. So if you wanted to see, like, well, where did this ad air? Like, in what program, because we're recording television? Or where was this clip taken from, if it's another clip from around the web? You can see more context. So the idea of gotcha journalism and things like that, this is sort of a more Wikimedia-like vision of citations, references, and where things kind of came from. You can sort of see the EDL list, at the bottom here. So these are just little asset. There's like a ping here. There's a little MP4 somewhere down here in tracks. Various kinds of things. And what's really cool is there's a remix button on all of these projects. So you just hit this little thing that kind of looks like recycling or something. And you basically can see what you, I guess the future is iMovie, right? It looks kind of like iMovie, which is kind of nice and familiar. So you can bring up text, you can drag it around, you can edit it. So if you wanted, you could say that's, whoops. Well, you could say that's a lie or something like that. You can move stuff around. You can trim and do all sorts of interesting things. And right over here, you can import HTML5 video, YouTube, Vimeo, archive.org, of course, SoundCloud, and some other ones. OK, so let's go back. I guess this is good enough. Whoops. Hold on. Just going to go back to this one. OK. There we go. So the Internet Archive, probably a lot of you have heard of us, but some of you probably haven't. We're a nonprofit library. We have millions of free things and stuff. We've been collecting the World Wide Web for 20 years. So we've got really old and embarrassing versions of Yahoo, Microsoft, and any website you guys have done, we've probably got the embarrassing early version. We also record television. We have 1 million news shows from the United States that have captioning that are searchable in our archive, and I'll do a really quick demo in a second. We have emulated software, video games. We have lots of audio. We have 500 billion captures of the web, and lots more. So my role was mostly as a volunteer on Popcorn. I just thought it was like one of the coolest things ever. I'm kind of a video nerd, as we all are. And so I got to integrate the archive.org kind of assets, video and audio. I kind of pushed for citations and link backs because that was really important to us, and we believed important for sort of rights holders because we, as a library, kind of get a little leeway. So we want to make sure that people understand where things are coming from. We're not claiming copyright. We're not claiming the rights, but we could then cite back to like NBC Universal or something like that in the full program if we wanted to, which we do sometimes. Also got involved with getting a JW player as a fallback or helping with that. This is sort of pre-H.264 codec in Firefox, although they have that now. Thank you, Cisco. Nothing to do with Cisco. Oh, well. Cisco. All right. Thanks. He's got a Moz shirt. And yeah. OK, so Mozilla's deployment goes offline circa 2015. Why? Well, it was very early, so sort of pre-promises, or really before promises really got going. So there's a little bit of callback hell. There's a lot of codecs. They all require integration, all these different pieces. The Twitter maps, the tweets, the maps, there were pop-ups, there were all sorts of really cool and awesome things. But some of you are here, and you change your APIs, and you give it maybe a year or two, but at some point you deprecate or you remove the old API. So these things just churned and took up so much team time. So there needed constant upkeep. The user model was a little unclear. It was like, is this for filmmakers? Is this for fact checkers? Is this for editors? Is this for your parents? Is this for us? Like, a little unclear. Turns out a video editor in a browser is actually hard. I mean, who would have thought? It's actually really hard to pull off, but it is. And Mozilla had a great idea that this would be sort of one hub of many. And that lots of other people would sort of integrate the Popcorn webmaker experience on their websites as well. Unfortunately, it required Node.js, a database, a file system for storing your projects, even though they're pretty small, login systems so you could sort of get your projects associated with your account. Mozilla eventually made Persona, but then Persona maybe kind of became a strategic thing as well. I'm not sure. So in the end, it just kind of lost out to other priorities, as some things do. 2016, X-Men Classic, The Dark Phoenix. So we're phoenixing it and bringing it back. This slide title is from Ben, who's going to join us in a second. But the idea is basically make it all client-side, rip out the back end. So a guy named Mike Nolan came in, and he just tore out the entire back end. And we're all really surprised, like, does it work? It does work. It actually works quite well, and it's actually faster. So that sort of caused a lot of ripples and got more community involvement. 5 of us sort of jumped in a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago. We got the player and embed side working. He had previously gotten the editor working. Dan Schultz, who's going to join us, got YouTube importing again. Brian Vibber has been working on sort of wiki integration. He's been very interested in sort of popcorn integration or potentially popcorn integration. You can now save your projects right to archive.org. You can do that either anonymously or with a login account. And we're sort of standing behind a permanent home at archive.org/pop. So hopefully this will never happen again and vanish. And as a cute thing, we basically were trying to figure out what's the lightest way that you could pass around projects. So we're actually stuffing the JSON EDL in the metadata of JPEGs and GIFs, so you can actually just pass those around. Drop it into a player editor. It will basically just play your little complicated video. It's crazy, but fun. And since we ripped out the back end, I just thought this would be funny because I'm a huge fan of Docker right now. But of course, Docker is like not au courant enough anymore. Serverless computing is all this. So this was my funny play on words. This is not serverless computing, like throw me off the stage. But Willy Wonka proves how trendy. OK, so again, the idea is simplify the product. Just stick to audio and video, imagery, text, commentary, rip out the rest of the stuff, remove flashy sort of lower value stuff like the map stuff, the Twitter stuff. There was some 3D stuff and I think even some VR stuff at one point. That's all gone, although the ghosts remain in some parts of the code. And then there's a new feature which is basically flattened the whole project to an MP4, and that's using video Pi. And that's a guy named Lorian Grendenach. I'm going to mangle his last name, but he's great. You probably might even know him. And the MP4 will increase reliability, shareable, and archiving kind of abilities. So now the whole thing's a little more conventional. It's a little more understandable to users. It's kind of a simple iMovie type thing, but it's still very web native. It's right in your browser, and there's still tons of possibilities. Just a quick rundown, since a lot of us are nerds here, geeks. The code base is pretty straightforward. There's some Bower. Everyone remember Bower? Sorry about that. There's require.js, the noteworthy ones, jQuery. They use their own framework. They weren't going to use jQuery, but like the rule is you have to use jQuery, so at some point they brought jQuery in. PopcornJS for the low-level stuff that we talked about before, HTML5 video, of course. There's some editor code right at the top in the source directory. There's an player embed. I'm mentioning this because maybe some of you want to get involved. It's very community-oriented, and the code base is not too bad. It's about like you would expect. There's some editor events, layouts, plugins, loaders, and stuff like that. It's about 100 JavaScript files. Not too bad. Impact. So it's inspired us at the TV News Archive, which is what I sort of work on, as well as the archive.org website, to really have a way to share clips, to make commentary, to fact check. The debates has been a really cool thing. And we've got 1 million hours of US news that are searchable, playable, embeddable, quotable, and we have lots more. And I'm going to try a quick, yes, that's fine, demo. So let's say you come to archive.org TV and you want to search for release tax returns. You put your quarters in. OK. And so you get a bunch of search results. It's searching the captioning, which is pretty cool. And so let's go ahead and click on this one. And this one jumps right to what someone actually cited somewhere, like maybe they tweeted this. But you can see these sort of playable clips.
When she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted, as soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns. And that's against my lawyers. They say, don't do it.
Oh, Donald, do it, do it. Do it. You're not like chicken or something. Okay, so going back to here, and you can obviously search for more things than just that. All right, I guess I'm sort of stuck in this mode temporarily or whatever. Actually, wait, hold on a second. That's it. Okay. So for the 2016 presidential election, we've been doing a new experiment at the archive called Near Real Time, NRT TV. So we're about 2 minutes behind the wall clock. So while debate's going, we're basically processing it, recording it, processing it, putting up into items with permanent URLs that are clippable, citable, tweetable, and all that, with about a 2-minute delay. And what this allows, using the kind of awesome, which I found recently, Dailymotion HLS.js, we can do 1-minute chunked MPEG transport stream, 264 AAC pieces. We can serve those out quickly. With HLS, you can have a pausable sort of live stream about 2 minutes behind. We can also then rapidly turn those around with the sort of AAC transform, the AAC transform, which will make it a web playable clip as well, so you can play it on the detail, what we call a details page, which we saw before. So it's kind of a neat way to incorporate these little 1-minute chunks. This allows for rapid turnaround of captioning, tweeting, fact-checking, embedding. It's been really fun. It's actually one of the more fun things I've worked on in about 5 years. And on our back end, there was someone who was talking about sort of single files versus splitting things up. We are kind of a single file type thing. We can't really afford the space for multiple qualities because we keep the originals. So we record 24/7, 75 channels around the clock on average, and we keep all of the originals. So we only want one megabit-ish kind of derivative, as we call it, going out in MP4. So we use Mod H.264 streaming, which is a sort of unmaintained but awesome thing that works in all the major browsers, so a little shout out there. And it will jump right in between the keyframes of the clip you want, and it does it lossless. It just rewrites the move header. So you get a really efficient thing out the door. And as a fun hack, just to sort of explain or see if I can get thrown off, to dive in between keyframes, which it wasn't doing, and it was not going to be very easy to do semi-lossless. Dumping the audio is easy. So I dump the audio frames that we don't want, sort of in between the place you want to jump into. But you just crank up the video to like 10,000 frames a second. So the user basically doesn't hear the audio. It's gone. You see, and then suddenly it starts playing where you want. Terrible, right? But fun. OK, so now we're going to get joined by Ben Moskowitz and Dan Schultz and see if this works. Can you hear us?
Yes. Hello.
All right.
Hello. Bit of an echo, but we'll make it work.
Yeah.
I'll mute mine temporarily.
So, thanks for bringing us in. I think I should just introduce myself quickly. I used to work for the Mozilla Foundation, and I was involved in this long odyssey that Tracey has described to sort of build a web-based video editor. I'm no longer at Mozilla. I'm actually a contributor at this stage, but I'm still really passionate about what we're doing. And in some ways, I think that we have the value of a web-based editor in 2016, and with things like the TV archive than we did back in 2011 when we got started on this. So the first efforts that I know of to build public infrastructure, public tools for people to remix content on the web and to remix culture. In some ways, the genesis of this was back on Wikipedia, because in 2009, when HTML5 was becoming a thing, HTML5 video, one of the first and most exciting sort of open source projects people started dreaming up was, well, cool, now we can build a totally open source, totally patent-free codec, totally public interest sort of system for people to edit video on Wikipedia the same way they can edit text. And I think people have taken a lot of different cracks at that. And Popcorn, I think, is the first to be built in an open source way, to have a shot at being that sort of thing. And so, now that it's almost entirely client-side code, now that we've sort of streamlined the product and made it much more familiar to users, I think less exotic, less about remixing the web and more about editing video on the web. And now that we have things like the TV news archive, there are such awesome applications of this thing, like having high school students do media literacy or civics work using the TV archive. When I was in high school, the way we did civics was you go and you'd read the current events in the newspaper, and then you'd write a paper. And with this, we can have students go sort of research the record of television news and see what the candidates are saying, and have them do their work in the medium of video, sort of copy and paste video into effectively video essays. And so this is, I think, really exciting, not only in an education sort of application, but for journalism, for sort of discussions on the web. One of the really neat things that Tracey didn't mention is that we've been working on better integrating with social media. So during the debates, the presidential debates, I think Dan will tell us a bit about the technology there. We had young people remixing the debate in real time. When the candidate said something outrageous or untrue, they could instantly meme it with this tool, or do fact checks and other really exciting things. And those videos appear natively in your Twitter feed and on your Facebook wall. So I just think that we're at a really awesome point, and hopefully folks in the crowd who are into open video or into sort of pushing the boundaries of what we could do in a web browser. Hello. If you are interested, we'd love to have you join us, work on any part of this, from the user experience to the sort of back end, and really finding the applications that make this thing sing and provide value to people. So then I think I'll kick it up to Dan.
First off, how are we on time? I'm on the East Coast, so I don't know. Left.
4 minutes.
Okay, so I won't ramble too long. Yeah, so I actually want to talk a little bit about. So this is about the Popcorn Internet Archive collaboration, and there's, like, in addition to the video that the archive is collecting and the remixability that Popcorn offers, we're sort of part of this suite. We're doing some interesting data analysis side of the equation as well. So again, all open source. And the big picture vision is that there's so much video going on that's so relevant to kind of our democracy and the functioning of our decisions. The archive is capturing that. Popcorn is making it so people can play with it, but and better understand sort of what are the patterns around the message. Can then empower more informed remixes, more informed analysis of spin, understand what moments are becoming memes. So there's kind of the initial product that we kind of tried to translate some of this stuff to. And it uses audio fingerprinting, an open source tool, it's a Python tool called audfprint, which converts the videos we have into these fingerprints, which can then be really quickly compared with one another. It does frequency analysis and sort of slices the sounds into microseconds, compares microsecond hashes with other video microsecond hashes, and where there are enough in common that align, that is flagged as a match. So what we've been doing is sort of part of, in addition to the near real-time video stream, and in addition to making this stuff remixable, we are tracking what parts of the debates and what parts of the Trump tapes are getting coverage in what markets that we're recording. So we've been releasing this data set. If you go to politicalarchive.com, and at the top there's a debates link. You click that, you can actually download these data sets that we're generating, which will say, hey, this was the highlight, right? It's every, this piece, Trump saying you'd be in jail has been rebroadcast by, MSNBC 15 times, and by Fox 17 times, and by CNN 3 times, and you can actually sort of quickly pick out what moments might be worth a remix, or might be worth juxtaposing, because so many people are talking about it.
Cool. And whoops.
Oh, and that system, by the way, is all open source. Sorry, it's all open source. If you I don't have like a bit.ly, but if anybody wants the URL, my GitHub ID is Slifty, SLIFTY. It's called the Duplatron. So it's just, it's got a Docker file that hasn't been fully tested, but in theory, you could run your own media analysis from the fingerprints that the Internet Archive is planning on releasing over the next couple months.
Yeah, and so we showed the political ad archive kind of briefly, and it's really neat. You can actually see political ads tracked through different markets. We're recording in about 10 markets right now across the United States. So you'll see ads float around, and as Dan was saying, you can actually see clips of excerpts or things that someone said or the apology tape, anything. It can basically be tracked by these audio fingerprints. So really cool stuff, and all of that's embeddable in Popcorn. So I think that's mostly it. Let me just give you the end of the discussion. This just gives you some URLs in case you want them, including these slides if you happen to be watching a rebroadcast or something like that, as well as our Twitter handles. So you can get involved. Archive.org/pop is where you can see the player and the editor. And then you can get involved in any of the forks or the code bases. We'd love to help. We need the help. So.
We have time for a couple questions.
Yeah, as a quick question, can you talk a little bit about your timeline model? Is there an interest in actually speccing that out or having some kind of, I don't know, open format that would be interchangeable with other editing systems, or?
Oh, interesting. You mean like the sort of the EDL kind of thing? Like,
Yeah, your timeline model,
yeah.
multiple tracks, and some sort of, and interoperability, especially with other potential asset management systems, and being able to work with different media from other sources.
I would assume that would be pretty simple, right? I mean, I don't know. Someone was here from Avid. There's probably some other people.
Well, that's me.
That's you. I was thinking it might be you. Good question. I bet you it would be pretty easy, right? Because these are simple.
Well, yeah, no, easier said than done.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's huge interest on our side.
Yeah, we'd love to.
So we have our own web-based video editing suites, and we'd love to open up the spec as well for
Yeah, let's definitely talk.
Okay.
Cool.
One more?
Just a question
While we're
on
getting the
your
mic.
architecture for the near live TV. It seems you're using FFmpeg to make TS segments that you then send to HLS.js to convert back to ISO containers, which you then give to your source buffer. Why not just make ISO containers in the first place and send those out?
Probably because I don't know as much about that would be my probably real answer. But the second thing is we record 1 minute chunks in MPEG transport stream on disk, and usually MPEG 1, 2, or whatever the provider is giving us. Sometimes it's DVBS, sometimes it's ATSC. But basically it's all MPEG transport stream, and it's 1 minute chunks. So I was trying to stick with the 1 minute chunk model because those were relatively quick to encode in MPEG 4. So basically the question is sort of why transform it twice, because HLS.js is...
Using an in-browser transform that seems unnecessary since you control the original format. Just archive it as an ISO container and then deliver it as an ISO container.
Well, so eventually this is like a few minutes after the debate or the show wraps, we will then kind of concatenate all of it to the original file pieces, both the MPEG, MPG, or TS file, and the MP4. That's sort of an intermediate state, and then we actually take the whole huge MPEG transport stream and actually rederive it to one big monolith 2-pass MP4. So and then we go back to H.264, mod H.264. So the whole HLS thing is actually kind of temporary. So it's kind of weird. We only want the one model for our derivatives. I don't know.
That's okay.
Let's talk afterwards. Yeah.
Hey, so one quick thing for anyone interested in the next generation of this stuff. We're working with a lot of very legacy code that we've sort of built over the last N years. We are likely holding a meeting in New York early next year. So anyone interested in the idea of this open source project and this kind of infrastructure for remixing video content on the web, please get in touch with Tracey, Dan, or myself. We'd love to have you out there.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay.